back to another powerful episode of Healthy Ways, where we explore the many ways like healing, growth, and vitality intersect. Now, when you hear the word yoga, what comes to mind? Maybe a flexible influencer on a beach, a tranquil retreat in the Himalayas, or maybe you were just thinking, that's not for me. Well, today we are flipping that entire script. Joining us today is Rachel Lundberg. So, welcome to the show, Rachel.
Thank you. Really excited to be here.
Amazing. So, dear listeners, before we delve deep into the discussion today, I'll quickly love to introduce you with Rachel. So, uh, let me tell you first, she is a former classical ballet dancer turned yoga educator, a chronic illness survivor, a woman who left a high demand religion at 41 to finally reclaim her voice. And she didn't just find yoga, she transformed it. So, through her revolutionary work at YogaOAK University and her groundbreaking alignment based yoga specialist, certification, she is teaching more than movement. So she is teaching a pathway back home to the self. So, dear listeners, this episode is for anyone who's ever felt like their body was the enemy, anyone healing from spiritual or I would say the physical trauma. And for every person who believed that yoga was too much, too late, or not for them. So, let's get started. Welcome to the show again.
Thank you. Thank you. That was a wonderful introduction.
Thank you. Thank you. So Rachel, like your journey from ballet to chronic illness to founding Yoga Oak is definitely an extraordinary, I'll say. So, what was the defining moment when you knew the old model of yoga just wasn't enough, not for your body and not for the people that you wanted to serve?
Well, I think the first thing to understand about yoga is that it's a philosophy that has been around for ages. A specific age nobody can truly nail down, but movement is one small portion of what yoga is all about. And I began to realize that throughout my career training other yoga teachers is that when we would dive into the philosophy of yoga, the truths that exist within the philosophy are truths that span across all religions, all spiritual practices, and just basically just good human living. Um, and so for me, it was a catalyst to assist me in leaving behind some very fundamental belief systems that had formed and informed my life. But in addition to that, so basically, was my own understanding that yoga is a pathway to the self. That yoga is it is a blueprint for how to live a good, loving, wholesome, kind life, and and that I equate yoga with life itself. So I don't I don't specifically say that you must be doing yoga poses in order to be doing yoga, that yoga is life. And so that is what I've adopted. And yes, I do teach all the yoga poses and I do train yoga teachers. But ultimately, are you living a life of alignment where you feel aligned within yourself enough to be able to shine your uniqueness through?
Hmm. Very true. Very truly said. Yeah. And also, like, was there a resistance from the yoga world or even from within yourself when you started rewriting the rules of what yoga could be?
I wouldn't say there's been any resistance. However, there is a lack of education in the yoga teaching world around um, around just the way that the physical body works. So, the yoga practices that we've adopted in the West specifically, um, are very based in the physicality of the practice, but not necessarily in the anatomy of the human body.
Okay.
So, our bodies are intended to move in certain ways, in lots of different ways. Um, However, most yoga teachers that go out to start teaching these poses don't understand, haven't been taught. I shouldn't say that it's a lack of desire. However, they just haven't been taught, this is the way that your joints move, this is the way that the muscles are working. And so that when you see a student struggling in a particular physical posture, you can problem solve and assist to modify what they're doing so that they are able to actually do the physical practice of yoga in a way that works well for their own unique body.
Yeah.
So I would say it's more of a lack of information and training rather than a resistance. However, I will also mention that because of my focus on alignment and the classes that I teach tend to move a little slower than more romanticized styles of yoga that move really quickly with a lot of focus on moving with the inhalation and the exhalation. I take a lot of time in the postures and I do a lot of educating while people are in the postures.
Hmm. Very true. Yeah. I mean, I think that speaks to so many of us. When our healing no longer fits the mold, we start forging our own path. I mean, that's where the magic begins. So, yeah.
Yes, and there's the thing that I think also that people don't always understand about yoga is that yoga has been, especially in the physical practice, have been evolving for a long time.
Mm,
And and so the poses that we see being practiced aren't necessarily ancient postures.
mm,
People have been taking this practice and evolving it to fit their style, their needs, which is really what yoga is all about. Honestly, is what is your unique pathway
correct.
to connect with your body, to connect with the world, to connect with yourself.
Got it. Got it. And so let's talk about the InBodyWise yoga. I mean, uh,
Mhm.
it's not just about the flexibility, but also about integrating the brain, body, heart. So, for the listeners who have been intimidated or uh, even uh, hurt by uh, traditional yoga approaches, what makes this method different?
Mm.
Mhm.
Well, I will say the InBodyWise program is unique because it's not about yoga postures. The alignment based yoga specialist program that I have created really will assist
Okay.
teachers in understanding how to
Mm,
work with students so that we do prevent injury and we can assist people in healing from and in getting stronger. So that's a very physical approach in alignment. When I start working with people in the embody-wise yoga world or sphere, um, what that's about is, as the word says, in body, is to, and wise, is that we become wise to the nature of the brain and how the brain works and develops patterns and habits in our lives.
mm,
We become attuned to how the body speaks so that we understand our window of tolerance, which is a way for us to know when we've kind of reached our maximum and how to reel ourselves back in. Um, and I'm speaking more in in a mental, emotional, spiritual way. And then ultimately, how do we connect with the wise heart that lives within each of us? And that really is meant to be the main informant to how we live an inspired life. And much of the time, our heart is protected by and or being guarded by physical sensations in the body and mental patterns and habits. And I know this very well because I fell chronically ill for over a decade in my um, through my 30s and very early 40s. And my journey back to wellness was a journey of understanding the brain, learning to listen to my body, and ultimately connecting to the heart.
Okay, okay, okay. And like, how does this approach change or change things for the healthcare providers who want to recommend yoga but worry about safety or accessibility?
Well, for healthcare providers, um, when they're looking to, and it's very, very common that they will suggest to patients that the patient should try and or incorporate yoga. Um, they're usually referring to the physical practice of yoga. So they're not necessarily referring to um, the InBodyWise. So the InBodyWise program, there would be a combination of both. Ultimately, is that people would come into a physical yoga class, learn how to move their bodies. And so that's what happens in my brick and mortar studio. Is that people come in and or they tune in online and they take classes and learn about how their body works. And then in a way that, again, like I said earlier, suits the needs of that person specifically, so that they're not just going into a class with masses of people moving at a speed and rate that they can't keep up and don't understand. I have multiple healthcare providers that have graduated from my alignment-based yoga specialist programs, and I do have medical providers that recommend specifically that people come to this style of yoga. So I would say as far as the physical practice goes, that seeking out an alignment-based yoga specialist would really be ideal for most people getting started in yoga, and for healthcare providers to be referring to people to. That said, for those that are dealing with chronic illness of any kind, whether that's pain or chronic inflammation or chronic anxiety or depression, then in addition to the movement based practice, to recommend the InBodyWise yoga path as a way to understand the way the brain works, connect with how the body is speaking, and ultimately connecting with the heart. And that combination can really lead people to lasting wellness, as it has myself and many other people that I've assisted over the years.
I totally understand. Yeah. I mean, it's so empowering to think of yoga as a prescribed movement, like a part of healthcare, not just kind of wellness culture. That's a game changer, I'd say. Yeah.
Well, it's becoming more a popular. Insurance companies now are starting to promote, people being able to take classes and have it covered. Um, there's more and more science behind the movement of yoga, and not just the movement, but the stress reduction that one experiences in a typical yoga class. There's usually always some sort of focus on breath and stress reduction. And just moving alone as human beings, we need to be moving for our entire lives. It's imperative to our mental, emotional, and physical health.
Got it. Got it. And okay, and like leaving a high demand religion like Mormonism is in the midlife takes the profound courage, obviously. So, how did that spiritual awakening shape your perspective on the intention, body, personal truth? What do you say?
Now, that's a big, big question. And I will say that it was a combination of many things that brought me to the space of being able to have the courage to leave something that I'd known my entire life. Um, it was a combination of a decade of chronic illness.
Uh-huh.
Um, I had started let me just start briefly. I had started teaching yoga in my late 20s, after the birth of my third child. So I came into teaching a little later, maybe than some people do. I was still Mormon at the time and raising my small children in that framework, married as well. And I fell chronically ill at the birth of my third child, with major anxiety, insomnia, inflammation, thyroid issues, and my whole world turned upside down. And but I had my yoga practice, and I still had the religion that I was with. But as I evolved in my journey and started to learn, ultimately, the way that I healed from my chronic illness was by some of the practices that I teach in BodyWise Yoga, where I started to retrain my brain by understanding how the brain works, because the brain is basically made up of patterns and predictions and associations and sensations, associations about bodily sensations. And I started to realize that if the brain can create the habits that it needs to survive in a family unit or in a society, then with conscious awareness, each of us has the capacity to rewire our brain. I think the most important word I ever learned in my life and the concept is neuroplasticity. The brain is plastic, that the brain continues to change throughout our entire lives. And if we become conscious of that, we can truly shape how our brain operates, which then affects the way that the body operates. Excuse me, and ultimately allows us to tune into and tap into a deeper wisdom. And the reason why I say all of that is because as I started to retrain my brain and understand how the brain works, I realized that not just myself, but all of us, when we're born into the world, are taught specific things that we need to do in order to be a part of a community or a society. And that as we grow in wisdom and we start to question whether or not that's our unique truth, that whether or not what we're taught is in alignment with our heart space.
Hmm.
When we start to ask those questions,
Correct.
then just what can happen is, and what happened for me was that I started to realize that the way I had been raised, as beautiful and loving and kind as it was, and affirming, and I don't want to speak ill of the way I was raised because it was beautiful. However, it was no longer in alignment. And I could feel that it had shaped so many behaviors in my life that were not helpful. And so, as I was retraining my brain out of chronic illness, I recognized for myself that path of religion that had been born into was no longer my path, and that in order for me to live in my full expression, I needed to leave that specific religion. And I had 3 teenagers at the time, and I was married. And my husband at the time and I, we both decided to leave together. And then eventually our children decided to join us. And that is an incredibly challenging and courageous thing to do for anyone in any, high demand religion. But what it did for me was it really catapulted me into deeper healing in my physical body, because I was able to release the patterns in the brain that had kept me in a specific um, mentality. And by getting out of that and freeing myself from that, then my body felt free to heal even more deeply, and ultimately inspired what I do. I mean, I've been teaching yoga for 20 years, but it changed everything about how I teach, what I teach, in the sense of, when I am teaching the InBodyWise programs, and basically how I show up in the world is completely different, because it's truly from my heart space at this point.
Got it. Hmm. And so like and did you practice yoga? I mean, practice of yoga uh, evolve during that time, or was it the very thing that helped you survive and move through it?
That's a great question. It is one of the fundamental things that got me um, through my chronic illness and the leaving of the religion. And the reason why is because one evening in particular, I'll just share a personal story. One evening in particular, and I was running a yoga teacher training at the time, and I've done several. I've been doing that for 10 years now, but um, one evening we were talking about yoga philosophy, and one of the students really expressed a deep desire to connect with self, with universe, with God, however you want to say it. And I was so touched by her authenticity, and it really touched me to the point where I realized that I had been raised to believe that there was only one specific way that somebody could technically get to heaven. And as I looked at her and I felt her authenticity, I just recognized, there's no one path there for people to connect to self, spirit, God, however you want to say it, like I said before.
Mm,
And it is so incredibly unique to each of us. And it is so equally powerful, no matter where you've been raised or what religion or what, excuse me, challenges you've had, that each and every one of us truly are amazing, incredible, astounding beings. And and that night, in feeling that profound respect and love for this other human,
mm,
gave me a lot of strength because I knew that even though I was leaving something that my entire extended family was a part of, my entire community, my entire really world of knowing was shifted. But I had the deeper knowing that I, just like everybody else,
mm,
is capable and given this seed of truth and wisdom in the heart space, that when you connect with that, there isn't you can't say one way is this and one way is that. It i- it expands and opens you up to understand that we are all so beautifully unique, that it is just a real path of honoring of self and honoring of others, and their journey. So yoga gave me a huge support. Would say my beliefs and understandings of the philosophies of yoga, as well as the practice, gave me incredible support through that time of transition, and continues to give me incredible support, and others as well. It can become truly a safe haven because you don't have to look outside yourself any longer for peace and for guidance.
got it. Understood. And you train not just teachers but also empower medical professionals to confidently refer patients to therapeutic yoga practices. So, where do you see the future of yoga in healthcare heading? Like, uh, how can we be a part of that movement?
Well, first of all, we need to understand that yoga is not when it comes to the physical practice, is not one size fits all. It is very, very dependent upon the education of the teacher, the quality of the training that a teacher has received. Um, it's especially if somebody is dealing with physical challenges, and or um maybe their body, like you said at the beginning, yoga influencers on the beach, things are starting to shift. However, there's a stigma that, you have to have this incredibly young, thin, flexible body in order to practice yoga. And that is absolutely not true.
Mhm.
However, um, however, I guess in answer to your question more specifically, and what I would love to see is that when a healthcare provider decides to prescribe yoga, that there are more teachers out there that feel confident that they can actually assist these students that are coming to them, not just for stress relief, but also to learn how to be more flexible, how to balance better, how to be stronger. And granted, those are going to happen in your yoga class, whatever yoga class you try. But what happens for a lot of people is they go to a first yoga class that they find at their local gym or whatever,
Mm.
and and if it's moving too fast and they're not being offered modifications or ways of doing it, a lot of people don't come back to yoga, or they say they hate yoga, or they don't want to do it, or they're too inflexible for yoga.
Yeah.
And I really am on a mission to let people know that that's not true.
Mm.
Um, that that as long as you can get up and down off the floor, you
Mm.
can do yoga. And even if you can't get up and down off the floor, there's so many aspects of yoga that you can do. Um, well, there's pranayama, which is a breathing practice. There's yoga nidra, which is a deep nervous system reset through the guidance of a teacher, or you can listen to it on. You can find yoga nidra guidances online. Um, so, but ultimately, healthcare providers would become more educated about the styles of yoga that are going to most benefit their patients, and that yoga teachers can start having more conversations with healthcare providers about what is needed for this particular patient. Whether it's a physical therapist that's sending this person, or an orthopedic surgeon, or whatever it is that's sending these people to yoga, um, that there's more of a network, and a communication between teachers and healthcare professionals. And I feel like the alignment based yoga specialist certification program that I provide to teachers and healthcare providers is closing that gap. It has the capacity to close that gap as more and more people learn about it. Um, that they can look for an alignment based yoga specialist and know that that person is trained to modify, assist, and guide someone toward moving better in their body. Um, and not only in a physical way, but also we really emphasize in my programs, that each of us as individuals, that we find our own personal yoga of alignment. And that means our own pathway of living. And ultimately, that's what each of us um, should be able to do, is really find that pathway. So it's multi-layered, but first and foremost is getting healthcare providers and yoga teachers educated on closing the gap between the people that really want to try yoga and that feel like there's not a place for them to actually do it, that feels safe and or welcoming. Excuse me. And so that's really what the alignment based yoga specialist program is all about, is closing that gap.
Exactly. Wow. That's really amazing. Wow. Rachel, I mean, thank you so much for showing us that alignment isn't just about the posture, it's about power. It's all about reclaiming the body, rewriting the story, and reconnecting to who we really are. So, to the listeners, whether you are healing from illness, rethinking your beliefs, or simply seeking a softer, wiser way to move, then this episode is your sign to slow down, realign, and listen deeply. So, dear listeners, explore Rachel's work at YogaOAK University. And if you are a healthcare professional or yoga teacher ready to make your practice more inclusive and intelligent, look into her ABIS certification. When it's changing lives from the inside out. So, Rachel, if someone wants to connect with you, what will be the best medium to connect?
Well, if you're looking for information on the alignment based yoga specialist programs, and the InBodyWise programs, then yogaoakuniversity.com is the home base for that. But also thriveyogaoc.com is my other website, which is the brick and mortar, and people can sign up to take live stream classes with me if they're not local to the area. And some of the other alignment based yoga teachers that we have in our group. And so those. both of those websites lead to the other, so you can find out the most by really YogaOAK University is well you're excuse me, where you're going to get most of the information about what we talked about today. And and yes, I would love to connect with more people and help more people find their way.
Amazing, amazing. That's really awesome. So, dear listeners, I'll put all the links in the show notes for your easy reference. And with this hope, until next time, honor your body, trust your journey, and as always, keep your mind healthy and your life full. So, thank you so much.